concrete steps urged, Chinese Premier Li Qiang cast for practical measures to strengthen bilateral ties in meeting with U.S. Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo in Beijing. Widening prospects. Legal & General Group, the UK's largest asset manager, looks to expand operations in China, unveils strategies to tap the vast potential of the world's second largest economy. Emerging trade horizons. The Urumqi International Land Port in Xinjiang has introduced streamlined services with an eye on elevating trade efficiency along the Belt and Road network. It is good evening from CGTN headquarters here in Beijing. This is Global Business. I'm Lily Lu. Chinese Premier Li Qiang has met visiting U.S. Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo in Beijing. Premier Li said that he hopes both nations can take practical measures to stabilize and develop bilateral relations. He also said the economic and trade exchanges between the two sides are mutually beneficial in essence. And he said Beijing is ready to pursue further dialogue and cooperation with Washington in trade. Raimondo said that the U.S. has no intention to contain China and is not seeking a decoupling. She also expressed a willingness to continue talks with China and said the U.S. is ready to deepen bilateral cooperation in artificial intelligence, climate change, and fentanyl-related issues. And for the latest, our reporter Dai Kai has more details in Beijing.
The Chinese premier mentioned that recently there has been a noticeable increase in dialogue spanning various sectors between China and the United States. This engagement has garnered positive attention and recognition on a global scale. He emphasized that constructive dialogues are essential for comprehending each other's concerns and identifying common ground. He said that the economic and trade relationship serves as a cornerstone for China-U.S. relations, and when managed effectively, it benefits both nations as well as the international community. Raimondo said that during the first 2 days of her visit here in China, there has already been productive exchanges with Chinese officials. We've also learned that she met with Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng, and we also know that the boosting travel and tourism is a big part of Raimondo's trip this time. So earlier on Tuesday, she also met with China's Minister of Culture and Tourism, agreeing to hold the 14th China-U.S. Tourism Leadership Summit in China in the first half of 2024. Raimondo's next stop this time would be China's eastern Shanghai city, where she's expected to visit New York University Shanghai and the city's Disneyland.
And earlier, President of the American Chamber of Commerce in China, Michael Hart, told us why the China market remains crucial to the U.S., even amid tensions between the two sides.
So I think it's natural for companies and countries to make sure they have a diverse and well-balanced supply chain. So over the decades, China has built itself up as a major manufacturing and sourcing location. China will continue to be an important part of U.S. companies and European company supply chains for decades to come. We do believe China will continue to be an important place for U.S. companies to invest. So there are plenty of areas where China is a leading sector. So for example, electronic vehicles. China's consumer market is very attractive. Aviation sector is very attractive. So a number of our member companies are very interested to continue to engage with China to see what China can do from a consumer point of view. But also China will continue to be important in terms of manufacturing and supply chain. So a whole host of our companies are very interested in continuing to doing business here. And we need to manage the relationship. So U.S. companies have said over the past 3 years, their number one pain point was U.S.-China relations. So if we can make U.S.-China relations better, we can probably expect more FDI from U.S. companies.
Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said on Tuesday that UK Foreign Secretary James Cleverly will visit China on Wednesday. The visit comes after an invitation by Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Wang Wenbin said that China and the UK, as permanent members of the United Nations Security Council and major global economies, need to shoulder a common responsibility of promoting world peace and stability and development. And he added that maintaining and developing bilateral relations is in the common interests of both countries. He also said that during Cleverly's upcoming visit, the two sides will have in-depth communication on China-UK relations, as well as international and regional issues of common concern. Wang Wenbin expressed his hope that the UK will work with China to uphold the spirit of mutual respect and conduct in-depth exchanges to promote stable development of China-UK relations. China was the UK's fourth largest trading partner in the 4 quarters to the end of the first quarter of this year. That is, with total trade reaching nearly $135 billion. But aside from trade, UK companies have also found success establishing and running business operations geared towards the China market. CGTN's Omar Khan spoke with the Vice Chairman of the British Chamber of Commerce in Guangdong for his views on the opportunities in South China.
Earlier this month, China boosted efforts to attract foreign investment, with the country's State Council unveiling 24 specific measures to increase inflows. For the British Chamber of Commerce Guangdong, which recently surveyed its members on doing business in China, the new guidelines could potentially boost investor confidence.
On a macro scale, what are British companies looking for when they come to China to do business, and what are sort of the areas where you've seen them succeed?
Firstly, I would say that from that survey, there was a lot more optimism this year than in the past. We surveyed people in the end of 2022, but then we redid it in April 23 because of the opening. Right. And 76% of British businesses felt optimistic. And where a lot of people are looking at is the Chinese consumption growth economy that the government's trying to push towards, and the scale of the market and the opportunities here. There's been a lot of opening in the e-commerce sector in China, especially with how you can deliver the goods into free trade zones and then have your goods here in China free trade zone, but then sell them into China one by one. That's something which a lot of companies in the UK don't know about, and I think it needs to be explained more clearly. This is possible. You can sell your products into China through these free trade zones.
Having first come to China in 2005 after qualifying as an accountant, Clayton took his expertise to Zhuhai, working in the sourcing industry and helping British firms navigate the Chinese market. Eventually, the firm he works for doubled down on their presence in the country, aiming to transform alongside the local market.
The depth of the supply chains in China is very, very difficult to replicate. From my research into Vietnam, Thailand, India, amongst other countries, yes, there's some sourcing to be done there, but the actual manufacturing, adding high value there, I don't think that's going to be available for quite some time.
As for other British firms, Clayton believes more clarity would go a long way in boosting confidence.
One thing that does come out is this level playing field, but secondly, also the clarity in regulation. So there could be regulation which is very good for Chinese companies and British companies, but companies want it to be clear, like crystal clear about what is this and then how do I operate with it.
James Cleverly is the first UK Foreign Secretary to visit China in 5 years. Though much of his trip is assumed to aim at rebalancing ties between the two sides, potential economic and trade cooperation would surely be welcomed by the business community. Omar Khan, CGTN, Guangzhou, Guangdong Province.
And CGTN's Gao Wang spoke to the China head of a UK firm, also one of Europe's largest asset managers and a major global investor, for his insights on the Chinese market.
As UK's largest asset manager and a global leader in pension solutions, Legal & General Group is growing its business in China and betting big on the world's second-largest economy. The group's head of China, Zhang Yumeng, said the country's economic transition and growth present opportunities.
I think in a way we have a level playing field, have a bigger and even better role to play in a market where the household transition is more direct towards capital market, and the so-called expertise, asset allocation, long-term financial planning, retirement solution start to count, really.
Zhang said the group plans to play an important role in wealth management and retirement solutions in China. And some new trends could be attractive bets, such as green transition.
And of course, China has made very significant stride in renewable energy sector, solar, wind turbine, battery. I think that's gonna bring huge transformation opportunity in real investment, and especially in ESG and and the green technology, and that's where we can make a lot of positive contribution as well.
According to the UK government, total trade in goods and services between the UK and China totaled more than $134 billion in the 4 quarters to the end of Q1 this year, up over 11% compared to a year ago. China was the UK's 4th largest trading partner, accounting for more than 6% of total UK trade. As China remains committed to promoting high-level opening up, there are high hopes for deepening trade ties and strengthening cooperation between China and Britain for mutual benefits and common development. Gao Ang, CGTN, Beijing.
Let's move on to some other headlines from China. China's outbound travel witnessed a robust resurgence during the summer month. Flugy, which is a travel platform backed by Alibaba, said that during the last 3 months, reservations for international flights through its platform surged by 12 times compared to the previous year. Furthermore, the turnover generated by booking visa services through the platform exceeded that of the corresponding period in 2019. Chinese smartphone manufacturer Xiaomi posted a revenue of 67.4 billion yuan for the second quarter. The company said on Tuesday that net income rose to 5.14 billion yuan during the period, that is up 147% on a yearly basis. Total revenues of China's state-owned enterprises stood at 47.7 trillion yuan, or $6.5 trillion during the first 7 months of this year. That is according to the country's finance ministry, and that's 4.3% higher from a year ago. In the meantime, total profits amounted to 2.7 trillion yuan, and that is 3.9% higher on a yearly basis. You're watching Global Business here on CGTN. Still to come on the program. The Urumqi International Land Port in Xinjiang has introduced streamlined services with an eye on elevating trade efficiencies along the Belt and Road network.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business. Only on CGTN.
Welcome back. Chinese President Xi Jinping on Saturday urged firmly grasping the strategic positioning of Xinjiang in the overall national situation. She also emphasized to better build a beautiful Xinjiang in the process of pursuing Chinese modernization. He made the remarks when he was briefed in Urumqi on Saturday about the work of the Party Committee and government of Northwest China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, as well as the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps. She affirmed that Xinjiang's achievements, while emphasizing the continued need to prioritize social stability. He called for strengthened coordination between stability and development, upholding the rule of law, improving legal instruments to support stability, and integrating efforts to combat terrorism and separatism. And now, to better understand the importance of Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region to China and the region, we're now joined by Wang Peng, a researcher at China International Cultural Exchange Center. Mr. Wang, great to have you on the show. So the Chinese president has called for endeavors to foster lasting stability and growth in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. What are some of the notable economic challenges currently that is impeding the region's progress?
I think first, the regional development of Xinjiang is unbalanced. There's a huge gap of development between southern and northern Xinjiang. For example, last year, the GDP of northern Xinjiang accounted for 70% of total region and 2.3 times than that of southern part. By contrast, the development of southern Xinjiang is relatively backward. The natural environment and resources are limited there, lacking of cultivated land, fresh and potable water. Therefore, the problems of poverty, employment, and education are suffering the local people of all ethnic groups in southern Xinjiang. Second, there is a serious imbalance between urban and rural development. Xinjiang's urbanization rate is lower than the national average. The local sector industry in Xinjiang is also less developed to create enough employment. So that is why the government of Xinjiang Autonomous Region pays close attention at social resources to promote the local education and job training in order to create more job opportunities for the people.
And also positioned uniquely along the Silk Road economic belt, how does Xinjiang's economic landscape engage with the larger regional context?
Xinjiang saw its foreign trade with 5 Central Asian countries increased by 92% to 75 billion yuan. That's about $10.7 billion in the first 4 months of this year, according to Urumqi Customs. The figure accounts for 43% of China's total trade volume with the 5 Central Asian countries during that period. And Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan have become the 3 major trading partners of the region in the first 4 months of the year. Among them, Xinjiang's import and export to Kazakhstan has reached 35.5 billion yuan, an increase of 122%. And so Xinjiang will continue to give full play to the policy and local location advantage of the core area of Silk Road economic belt, continues to optimize customs clearance facilitation measures, smooth the industrial and supply chains, seize opportunities for economic and trade cooperation with Central Asia, and promote high-level, opened up, and high-quality development.
Well, Mr. Wang, what sort of novel prospects does the Belt and Road Initiative unveil for Xinjiang's future?
I think now the most remarkable new opportunity that offered by BRI to Xinjiang is probably the reboot of China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan Railway, for short, CKU Railway, which has been postponed for more than 20 years. So now China is ready to support the CKU Railway and push for an early start of the construction of this project. China also supports more outstanding Chinese enterprises to invest in Kyrgyzstan and will facilitate the exchange of personnel and customs clearance of goods between the two countries. CKU Railway sets in motion a southern inland corridor between China and Europe, which could extend further to Middle East in the future, adding to the current northbound route that transits through Russia and Kazakhstan that China-Europe freight trains currently ride on, and jointly constituting a new strategic Eurasian logistic network along the BRI route. So we can say the establishment of the overarching transportation hub will contribute to the economies of Xinjiang as well as the landlocked Central Asian countries and facilitate their opening up and sustainable economic development.
Thank you very much for your insights, Mr. Wang Peng, researcher at the China International Cultural Exchange Center. Well, the Urumqi International Land Port is a key project within the core area of the Belt and Road Initiative. Over the past few years, the integration of one-stop services has boosted trade efficiency between China and countries along the Belt and Road network. Our reporter Zhu has more on the land port.
As a key stop for the China-Europe freight trains, the Urumqi International Land Port is a crucial nexus linking the economic area of Asia and Europe. Furthermore, it functions as the most proximal logistics center on the West Passage of the China-Europe freight trains, offering connectivity to Central and Western Asia, as well as Europe. In the first 6 months of this year, about 700 China-Europe freight trains have been shipped through Xinjiang, and over 80% of them operated through here. In recent years, a so-called one-stop goods clearance services hall has been set up. It has helped reduce the goods clearance time into only 1 hour.
Previously, in the absence of the one-stop goods clearance service hall, companies were required to navigate various departments for procedures, including customs, railway, and international road departments. However, with the current setup, they can efficiently handle all processes in a single location, ensuring swift completion.
Besides speeding up on-site clearance, Online services have also made it easier for companies from different provinces to apply for goods clearance.
For customers located outside Urumqi, the entire process can be carried out seamlessly online, eliminating the need for any manual intervention. This includes tasks like reserving train storage space and making settlement payments.
Looking ahead, the land port plans to establish additional centers with diverse functions to offer companies more accessible services for exporting their products.
By 2025, we aim to develop a business and trade center where companies can showcase their products, alongside standardized factories and an industrial park as part of our expansion efforts.
Thanks to measures like these, there is a substantial surge in activity. Data from the land port shows more than 19,000 freight trucks shipped through the port last year, doubling that of 2021. Additionally, over 1,000 China-Europe freight trains operated, with a year-on-year increase of 16.5%. Zhuzhu, Urumqi, in Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region.
And earlier, my colleague Michael Wang spoke to Ashad Rashid, who is chairman of the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for his insights on the Belt and Road Initiative and potentially what it means for ASEAN countries.
I want to get your take on the Belt and Road Initiative and potentially what it means for ASEAN.
If you look at that right now, I was very surprised. I flew to Laos, and then and there I was brought to what we call the dry port. And that's where the connectivity of the railway from China all the way to ASEAN. And then now it's being developed more towards to all the way to Singapore, all the way to Malaysia, Singapore, all the way. And that actually connecting to China and connecting to Europe. You can see the reality of this connectivity and how this is land connectivity being built. So I think this is something that very important. Because at the end of the day, when we talk about economic growth, it's how to make sure that we can create an efficient economy. And we talk about efficient economy, we talk about infrastructures. If you don't have the infrastructures, then we don't have an efficient and productive economy. So with that, I think that's how I see it. And but the problem is because it takes time, infrastructures. So the impact of that, you will not be able to see it in like day after. It's not tomorrow, but day after tomorrow. So this is something that, but I do think is a great initiative that should be pushed further by China. I think that's one thing globally we have sometimes forgot, that in any economic development, we need to make sure no one is behind. Exactly when you say about poverty, I think that a very good way for China to share with us. And one of the programs that we have in ASEAN, even, for example, on the agriculture, for example, we introduce, we call the inclusive closed loop models. The name could be different in the Philippines, in Indonesia, or in other country. But one thing, the spirit is this. When we talk about food security, when we talk about agriculture, we cannot forget the smallholders. We cannot forget the farmers. So we have to make sure that, when we talk about the how to develop this industry, we must make sure that we cannot forget the smallholders or the micro, small, medium enterprises. And those are the focus of ASEAN.
Time now to take a look at some other business headlines from around the globe. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has disclosed that the government on Tuesday decided to allocate 2 billion ringgit, that's equivalent to $430 million as initial funds to facilitate catalytic hybrid financing. Shifting our attention to Sweden, where the nation's economy encountered a contraction during the second quarter of this year that is due to a decline in exports and trade inventories. GDP was down by 0.8% from the previous 3 months. In the meantime, the economic sentiment among German consumers has taken a pessimistic turn, largely due to the elevated costs for food and energy and a sagging economy. The erosive impact of inflation on households' purchasing power has resulted in diminished expectations concerning consumers' income. And according to the recent United Nations report on food insecurity, there has been a notable rise in global hunger levels. In Brazil, nearly 1/3 of its population is grappling with this issue, even though the nation holds the distinction of being a major global food producer. Our correspondent Paulo Cabral has the report.
The menu today is beef ravioli with red sauce, all done with much care in the kitchen of this religious group in São Paulo. For the past 8 years, they've been preparing these meals and serving them to the homeless on the streets of São Paulo, many of them scavenging recyclable materials to earn money.
É meio carpileto, sei lá como chama, mas é muito bom.
It's great. It's really delicious. Thank God there are still good people in this country, people that look out for us and touch our hearts.
According to a recent UN report, the number of hungry people around the world increased by 122 million between 2019 and 2022. In Brazil, around 10 million people suffer from chronic malnourishment, while more than 70 million, nearly a third of the country, face some degree of food insecurity.
So Brazil is a rich country with great production of food. The problem in Brazil is that the people, the poorest part of the population, they don't have money. They don't have financial situation to afford to buy food in the markets.
Brazilian authorities say they are resuming policies that were effective during the leftist Workers' Party governments that got Brazil off the UN's World Hunger Map in 2014, a map to which it returned in 2018.
The food insecurity figures worsen in Brazil because many public institutions and public policies have been dismantled by the last government. The reintroduction of measures like the payment of family grants, increases in minimum wages, school food programs, and family agriculture programs are likely to have a strong positive impact.
Social workers like this group working with homeless people say the COVID-19 health emergency deepened Brazil's hunger and food insecurity problems, and that the situation has not yet returned to pre-pandemic levels.
The organizers of this food distribution say the pandemic changed the populations of people who are living on the streets.
In the past, homeless people were mostly men. Now we see many families who lost everything during the pandemic.
Father Denison says charity alone won't solve Brazil's hunger and food insecurity. For now, the meals that his institute serves to his community are acts of kindness that help sustain the needy, body and soul. Paulo Cabral, CGTN, São Paulo.
And that'll do for this edition of Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Lulu in Beijing. Thanks for being with us. Bye for now.